In the quiet countryside, where the wind still carried the whispers of war, there stood an old cemetery that no one visited anymore. Among the forgotten stones was one grave. Simple, weather-worn and covered with wildflowers that grew without being planted. For 7 long years, a loyal dog named Max had guarded that grave. He slept beside it through rain and snow, howled at the moon when the night grew too quiet, and chased away anyone who dared to come close. People said he was waiting for his master, a soldier who never came back. Farmers brought him food, children tried to play with him, but Max never left the grave for more than a few steps. His fur had turned grey, his body frail, yet his eyes, those faithful eyes, still searched the horizon every morning. It was as though he believed that one day his master would return, but fate had written something even stranger, because one day a small girl wandered into that lonely cemetery, and what happened next would remind the whole world that love never dies, it only changes form. The sun rose weakly through the clouds, casting pale light over the soldier's resting place. Max lifted his head, ears twitching as if hearing footsteps no one else could hear. He stretched, bones aching, and pressed his nose gently against the cold stone. Every morning began like this, a silent greeting to the man he loved more than life itself. Villagers had long stopped trying to take him home. They knew he would always return to the grave before nightfall. Children would whisper stories about him, calling him the ghost's guardian. But Max wasn't guarding a ghost, he was guarding a promise made in a war-torn field, when his master had looked into his eyes and said, "If I don't come back, you wait for me here." And Max had waited, through storms that split trees, through winters that froze rivers solid, through years when hope itself had died. Sometimes he howled into the night, not out of pain, but to remind the world that loyalty still existed. His fur had lost its shine, his legs trembled, but his heart refused to break. Every time someone tried to take him away, he'd return before dawn, as if guided by something unseen. And when he curled beside the grave, the wind would always grow calm, as though honoring his devotion. For 7 years, no human voice had touched him, no gentle hand had stroked his fur. He lived only for the memory of one man, a soldier who had once called him "my brave boy." And though the world moved on, Max stayed, because love like his doesn't fade with time. It waits. It was a spring morning, the kind where the air smells of rain and beginnings. A little girl named Lila was walking home from school, her red shoes splashing through puddles. She took a shortcut through the old cemetery, a place her mother had warned her never to go. But Lila wasn't afraid of ghosts. She was afraid of loneliness. Her father was a soldier too, away in a distant land, and every night she prayed for him to come home safe. When she saw the old dog lying beside a gravestone, she thought he was asleep, but as she stepped closer, his head lifted slowly, their eyes met. One pair young and full of wonder, the other tired and full of stories. Max growled softly, warning her to stay back. But Lila didn't move. She knelt in the mud and whispered, "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Her voice was small, trembling with kindness. For a moment Max stared, then lowered his head again as if sighing. Something in that child's tone, pure, gentle, familiar, broke the silence that had lasted years. Lila sat near the grave and placed a flower beside the stone. "This is for him," she said softly, "and for you because you miss him too." Max didn't understand her words, but he understood her heart. For the first time in 7 years, his tail moved just once, like a memory waking up. The next day, Lila returned. She brought a piece of bread, a scarf, and her mother's old water bottle. Max was still there, waiting in the same spot, his eyes fixed on the horizon. When he saw her, his ears perked up ever so slightly. Lila smiled, kneeling beside him again. "I told my dad about you," she whispered. "When he comes home, maybe we'll both have someone to wait for." The dog watched her quietly, then allowed her to touch his fur. It was rough, cold, tangled with years of dust, but warm beneath. She laughed softly. "You're not scary at all." Max pressed his head against her small hand, and in that simple gesture, something in the air shifted. It wasn't just a girl petting a dog. It was 2 lonely hearts finding the same missing piece. She started visiting every afternoon, always bringing food, always talking to him like he could understand every word. The villagers began to notice. "The soldier's dog has a friend now," they whispered. Some said it was fate. Others said it was madness, but Lila didn't care. She was certain that when she was near him, her prayers for her father felt stronger. Max followed her to the gate each day, then returned to his master's grave as the sun went down. And every time she looked back, he was watching, not with sadness anymore, but with hope, because love had found him again in the form of a child who believed in miracles. One afternoon, dark clouds rolled over the hills, and thunder shook the valley. Lila came running through the rain, clutching her little umbrella, her red shoes soaked. Max stood by the grave, fur wet and heavy. Refusing to move from his post, she shouted, "Come here, boy! You'll get sick." For a moment, he didn't respond. His loyalty was stronger than instinct. But then she ran to him, arms open, her small body shielding him from the storm. Something about that gesture, pure, fearless, kind, broke through years of silence. Max whimpered softly, resting his head against her chest. Lila smiled, tears mixing with the rain. "See, you don't have to be alone anymore." When the lightning flashed, it lit up the grave behind them, a name half erased by time. The soldier's spirit seemed to watch, calm and proud, as if blessing the bond between them. Villagers saw the two huddled together and felt a strange warmth spread through the cold day. Some said they saw a light flicker over the grave, glowing for just a moment before fading. That night, Lila's mother found her daughter missing and followed her footprints to the cemetery. She stopped in disbelief when she saw the child and the old dog lying side by side, fast asleep. The dog's head rested gently on the little girl's lap, his breathing calm for the first time in years. The mother wanted to call her back, but something about the scene held her still. It was as if she was witnessing a prayer made of silence and love. From that night on, she let Lila go. She knew this bond was sacred, and for the first time since the war, the old cemetery felt alive again. Even the wildflowers bloomed brighter near that grave. Max had finally found a reason to lift his head, to breathe, to wait for morning, and that reason had tiny hands and the gentlest voice in the world. Days later, Lila noticed something strange about the grave. A small piece of metal had rusted loose on the edge, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the stone. Curious, she dug carefully until her fingers brushed against something soft. It was a piece of fabric, folded neatly, and inside it, a letter sealed in a soldier's envelope. The ink had faded, but the words were still legible. To whoever finds this, it read, "Tell my dog Max that I kept my promise." "I fought bravely and I never forgot him," Lila gasped. Pressing her small hand to her heart, Max sat beside her, tail twitching, as if recognizing his name from the letter. She read the words aloud, her voice trembling through tears. The dog whimpered, then looked toward the sky. A soft, mournful sound escaping his throat was as though he finally heard the goodbye he had been waiting for all those years. Lila folded the letter carefully and placed it back where she found it. Then she whispered, "He didn't forget you, Max. He loved you till the end." For a moment, Max stared into her eyes, and something changed. The weight in his gaze lifted, replaced by peace. He licked her cheek gently, as though saying thank you. The wind carried the faint scent of lavender and ashes, the same scent soldiers once wore. Lila hugged him tightly, whispering, "He's free now, and so are you." That night, Max lay by the grave, but didn't howl like he usually did. He simply watched the stars, tail flicking softly. The villagers who passed by swore they saw two shadows, one of a man standing beside the dog. And for the first time in 7 years, Max slept with a smile. The following morning, something extraordinary happened. When the villagers came with food, Max wasn't at the grave. They looked around, confused. He had never left before. Then, in the distance, they saw him walking beside Lila, following her toward the edge of the village. His steps were slow but steady, like a soldier marching one last time. The villagers watched in silence, some smiling, some wiping away tears. Lila's mother waited at the gate, stunned to see the old dog beside her daughter. "He followed me, Mama," Lila said softly. "He doesn't want to stay there anymore." The mother hesitated, then nodded. "And let him come home." When Max stepped through that gate, it was like crossing from one life into another. He lay near their porch, head on his paw. He only sat quietly, like a guardian proud of his duty fulfilled. And when the wind blew, it carried the faint echo of his master's laughter. Even death couldn't separate them. It had only changed how they waited for each other. Max had finally learned that loyalty doesn't end at the grave. It transforms into love that lives forever. As winter approached, Max began to slow down. His steps were heavier, his breaths shorter, yet his eyes still sparkled whenever Lila called his name. She made a little bed for him near the fireplace, covering him with her favorite blanket. Every night she whispered stories of the soldier, of bravery, of homecoming. Max would listen, his tail tapping faintly against the floor. But one cold morning, he didn't wake up. He lay peacefully, his head resting on the letter she had found, his master's last words. Lila cried, holding him tightly, refusing to let go. Her mother knelt beside her, whispering, "He's gone to be with his friend now." Outside, snow began to fall, quiet, soft, endless. The villagers gathered once more at the cemetery. They dug a small grave beside the soldiers, placing Max gently inside. Lila placed her scarf around his neck one last time. Then she put the letter between the two graves, binding their stories forever. As the wind swept through the valley, a strange peace filled the air. Some said they heard a bark echo through the snow. followed by laughter. Lila smiled through tears.
"He found him," she whispered. The villagers bowed their heads,
knowing they had just witnessed a love that not even death could break. That night, the sky cleared, and 2 stars shone brighter than all the rest, side by side, forever. After Max's passing, the cemetery became a place of warmth instead of fear. Children began leaving flowers at the soldier's grave. Veterans came to salute, wiping silent tears, and every morning Lila came to sit by both graves, talking softly as if they were listening. The wind around the cemetery no longer howled. It hummed like a lullaby. People said it was because of the girl and the dog who had brought love back to the dead. Reporters visited, writing stories of loyalty, of miracles, of a friendship that crossed worlds. But Lila never sought fame. She only said, "He waited for someone to love him again.
I just showed up." Years passed, and she grew up. Yet she never forgot. Every year on that same day,
she returned with fresh flowers and a red ribbon. Sometimes she felt a nudge against her leg, though nothing was there. She would smile and whisper, "I know it's you, Max." The townsfolk started calling her the girl who freed the loyal dog. And as time went on, the cemetery became a place where people brought their hearts to heal. Because love leaves traces, and Max's paw prints were everywhere. Even after he was gone, the bond he created continued to save those who had lost hope. All because one child dared to sit beside a lonely grave and listen to what silence was trying to say. Many years later, on a warm autumn morning, Lila, now a grown woman, returned once more. She carried her daughter in her arms, a child with the same curious eyes she once had. Together, they walked through the familiar path lined with golden leaves. The graves were still there, untouched by time but rich with flowers. She knelt, brushing dust from the soldier's name and smiling softly. Her little girl asked, "Mama, who are they?" Lila answered, "A brave man and his best friend. They taught me what love really means." The child placed a daisy between the 2 headstones and said, "Then they can share." A gentle breeze swept across the hill, warm and comforting. For a fleeting moment, Lila thought she saw 2 shadows moving, one standing tall, one walking beside him, her eyes filled with tears, but her heart felt peaceful. The air shimmered, and she heard it, faint but clear, a bark carried by the wind. She whispered, "I never forgot you." And somewhere beyond the veil of time, a loyal spirit wagged his tail once more, because love like that doesn't fade. It just finds new hearts to live in. Lila's daughter laughed, chasing butterflies between the graves. The sound of her laughter mixed with the wind, turning grief into grace, and in that moment, Lila knew that Max's story would never truly end. It had simply become part of the land, the air, the hearts of everyone who believed in love. At sunset, the valley turned golden, the graves glowing like they were made of light. Birds circled above, their songs echoing like distant promises. Lila stood there one last time, holding her daughter close. The cemetery was quiet, not with sadness, but with peace. She felt the same presence she had known as a child, gentle and steady, and then she heard it. A bark, soft and playful, followed by a soldier's laugh in the wind. Her daughter looked up.
"Did you hear that, Mama?"
Lila smiled through tears. "Yes, sweetheart. That's what forever sounds like." The wind brushed past them,
wrapping around their shoulders like an embrace. 2 spirits watched from afar, a soldier and his loyal dog, their silhouettes fading into the setting sun. They had guarded each other in life, found each other in death, and taught the living how to love. When the last light faded,
the wind stilled, not ending, just resting, because even silence carries their story now. And every time the breeze passes through the old cemetery, flowers bow as though saluting something
sacred, a love that refused to die, a loyalty
that defied time, a bond born from war but healed by a child's heart. That's the sound that lingers, the sound of devotion, eternal and true. And if you ever visit that valley, you might just hear it too, a faint bark, a soft laugh, and the echo of forever. Love doesn't end where life does. It continues in the hearts brave enough to remember. Max taught the world that loyalty has no limits, not even death. He waited not out of sorrow, but out of love, a love so pure that even heaven waited with him. When Lila appeared, she didn't just save a lonely dog, she saved a love story frozen in time. Her kindness became the key that unlocked peace for two souls, one of man, one of beast, and together they proved that no goodbye is ever final when hearts still listen. In every act of compassion, a spirit is freed. In every gentle touch, a forgotten promise is kept. Because the strongest bonds are not written in words, but carved in silence, and the sound of true love, whether it's a child's laugh or a dog's bark, never fades. It becomes the wind that carries hope to those still waiting. The soldier's story ended in war, but Max's devotion turned it into eternity, and the little girl who cared enough to listen became the bridge between two worlds. Because miracles don't always come with wings. Sometimes they come with paws. They come with pause,